Alright, hello guys. Welcome back to the second episode of Better Than Sex, and today with a very special guest with a few surprise stories probably as well in his pocket, up his sleeves. Kamel, the founder and CEO of Contango. Kamel, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today.
Nice to be here, Daniel. Hi.
Super. Kamel, just to get started, because you and I, we spoke a bit, and I know that you know some of the rest of the team, but the community watching us today, they probably haven't heard about Contango, you, and apart from the few tweets, because we retweeted you guys a few weeks ago when you did your sale, but maybe you can give us a quick intro about who you are, what Contango does, and then we'll go into why we're speaking here together today.
Yes, of course. Contango is an app that you can use to do one-click leverage trading on, I think now 10 chains and 17 money markets in the Ethereum ecosystem. We offer products to bet on rate differential mainly. So I think it's better to explain that with a quick example. You know, like there is a staked ETH, so WSTEs, which has a bearing rate. Let's say it's 3%, and let's say you can borrow ETH at 2%, and you want to make the difference between the two. So you use a money market to put WSTEs as collateral, and you borrow ETH, and you make the difference. So that's the core of the protocol. Like we have around 90% of our activity around like what we call those correlated assets, being like on ETH, on USD. And then you have like a 10%, which is important to us, which looks like leverage trading on a perp, but still it's like still what we call looping using money markets. And that's our offering.
So, because Contango, the word itself, it comes from traditional finance. Maybe not something that many people are aware of, but it's quite a bullish name in itself, right? So, like, did you choose that, or can you maybe explain as well also what Contango means, normally speaking, if you were trading commodities, let's say?
Yes, of course. Like Contango V1 back in 2021 was there to bring what we call expiable futures. So you mean futures with an expiry date. So now in DeFi, what has really taken off is perpetual futures. And Contango is really like a bit of a geeky term in finance to explain a situation where the price of the futures is above the price of the spot. Because a future is a derivative, meaning that you compute the price of the futures by taking into account the price of the spot. So the price of the futures could be above or under, and when it's above, you call it in Contango. When it's under, you call it in backwardation. So
already itself, and we hope we're gonna get a Contango on the price itself of your assets. I guess in the future, that's kind of the point in the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like basically, it's a really good market sentiment to know if you're in a bullish or in a bearish market. So usually, when the market is bullish, you are in Contango because people try to get more exposure on leverage by using futures products. And the opposite is also true. When the market is bearish, usually the market is in backwardation.
So, Kevin, I want to speak more about Contango in a second. Because you guys did something very impressive a couple of days ago, and that's the main subject that we're going to talk about today. It was a big raise on Fjord, but Contango, just a few numbers. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I can see, it's nearly 20,000 users, unique users, more than 4 billion in traded volume. So it's numbers of a certain significance, especially for DeFi native projects. But before we go into all of that, we have, just before we start the show, we discussed about something very special, which is actually that, Kamel, you were one of the earliest contributors for SwissBorg itself, all the way back to 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you can just, because everybody here watching is part of the SwissBorg community, and I'm sure they'd love to hear the early day stories about SwissBorg, because you were actually one of the early contributors on a very famous OMS, or now publicly called Smart Engine.
Yes. I think you're gonna be like the first one to hear this story. Like the full story is that back in the days, SwissBorg raised tens of millions. That was like in 2017, and they had like this super interesting vision of creating like a market aggregators. At this time, decentralized finance was not existing. That was not a thing. So if you wanted to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, like the only choice you had was to go and select one centralized exchange and go through it, or you can open multiple accounts. Their vision was amazing. Like they wanted to create this like smart order router where basically this will monitor the price on different centralized exchanges. And at this time, I was working in a consulting firm specialized in like financial trading technologies called Adaptive Consulting. And we were very famous for very low latency, high throughput, and reliable systems, especially with a technology called Iron. And I think like Nicolas from SwissBorg was really into it. And at this time, they needed some help to build the initial technology. So they came to get some let's say some help and some dev resources, but the vision was very clear from the start. Adaptive came into the play to bring its knowledge, but it had always been the ambition from SwissBorg to bring their own team and to take over this technology and to build on top of this technology, to take full ownership of it. So at this time, like we had myself more like on the like management team, and then you had like Bruno, who is also a co-founder in Contango, was extremely deep into the smart order routing of SwissBorg. And I think that was the first collaboration, like maybe a year, and then you got like first contributors from SwissBorg coming to build the technology, and at some point they took over the baby, and it is what it is at the moment.
Because the OMS, the smart engine, so the order management system, as we call it internally, but it's become almost a meme at SwissBorg because it's something that everybody is so proud of, and we think, or everybody thinks, the jewel of engineering that SwissBorg has. It's, as you say, the ability to find best execution in minimal fraction time, super quick on all these different order books. And so essentially this comes originally from you guys. And here you are today with your own firm, having done a successful race just a couple of days ago. Before we go back on that, do you know that actually now I'm sure you're aware of it, but the original MS now also integrates DEXs. So it's not only centralized order books. You can go and FX as well. So you can go from Swiss franc to whatever stupid meme coin you want to have in Solana in one single trade, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, totally. Like I'm super glad to see that you have monitored technology and you have decided to expand the product with decentralized finance. At this time, it wasn't a thing. I think it's the supernatural next step, and really, like it's a killer product to get like buzzwords of centralized and decentralized finance to give you the best execution. And I'm super happy to see that this technology is still alive and even better that it has evolved. Like as a consultant for years, I've built many technologies which have died, but SwissBorg really pushed the boundaries and kept expanding on it. So it's super amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. The famous saying that the consultants, they go, there's no impact at the end, but you're the living proof of the opposite. And with SwissBorg together. And so you went from being the early contributor to the prime jewel of the SwissBorg engineering ecosystem. And that led you now, a couple of years later, to creating Contango. So more than the product itself, which you gave us a quick recap before, tell us, just in a few words, what did you want to achieve with Contango? What compelled you to start digging deeper into now this whole looping mechanism that you guys got to find easy ways to find leverage and make the markets more efficient in a way, right? So what was the journey that led you to this mission that Contango has today?
Yes. So, like, first of all, like when I was still at Adaptive, I was already trading like a strategy called cash and carry, which got like super famous now. Basically, it's when you take advantage. Sorry?
Didn't Arthur Hayes like publish something about this a couple of years ago?
Oh yeah. There is a very famous article called "All Aboard," and indeed, like cash and carry is one of the most famous strategies, and any hedge fund or asset manager we use to make like almost free money. Like really, like at the end, the strategy is very simple. You have a difference of price between the futures and the spots, and what you just have to do is to short the futures and go long the spot when the market is on Contango, and you know exactly the interest rates or the free risk rate you can make by holding up to expiry. Of course, you can spice it up. You can put leverage. You can try to exit the position before expiry, but the very basic form is like super simple and really well explained in this Arthur Hayes article indeed. So I was already trading this, and then I got like another guy which is also in Contango, Alfredo and Bruno, and then we discovered decentralized finance. I was like, whoa, this is really amazing. Like, hey, can we do cash and carry in decentralized finance? So at this time, we're doing that between Binance and BitMEX. And we realized very quickly that you didn't have the instrument called unexpiratable futures, which is the equivalent of trying to get a fixed rate. So the idea was like, okay, how can we get into the game and bring like expirable futures and fixed rate into decentralized finance? And really, like the way I see it is that the decentralized movement is super interesting and like massive, and really it's a game changer for anyone who has been in finance and trading technology for a while. And I really wanted to be part of this movement, right? Like at the start, when I really get into it and like really thought about bringing that to DeFi and starting to pitch that to my co-founders and bring them aboard, it was more about being part of this movement, right? And trying to lead a way in the at this time, like the fixed rate space and decentralized like futures, which are so essential to finance. And yeah, that was like the initial push, and this is really what we pitched and what we used also to fuel our dev effort during the first hackathon we did. That was like the first step toward creating Contango. Yeah, it's DeFi, the big name here.
So you started with this delta neutral play, brought it to DeFi, and then now we went from V1 to you're currently V3. What excites you about the future? What's next for Contango? Like you've done this raise, which we're about to talk about, and yeah, why should people get excited as you guys go onto the secondary market and involve your community even more so?
Yeah. So the V1, interestingly, at this time, we called it like really expirable futures. Like that was the bold vision there. Then there are some structural issues, or not even issues, but like interest in decentralized finance about a fixed rate market. So we were using a protocol called Yield Protocol, which was the money market on which at this time we're already doing looping, but instead of using variable rate market, we're using fixed rate market. V1 did not get the traction we wanted it to get, but I think in general, no fixed rate protocol managed to take off besides Pendle, which came much later. And at this time, well, Pendle really already existed, but they really took off during the point Manta, which came later, maybe like 2022, maybe 23. And what we just did at the end is like we just replaced fixed rate market with variable rate market, because this is where DeFi is. And yeah, we got a lot of success immediately with Contango V2. and we kept what is at the heart of the protocol, which is looping, and now we frame ourselves as the looping layer of DeFi. So that's for V2. And by really taking user feedback and also seeing how the product was used, we see that the biggest problem comes from the spot markets. Like when you use looping with big whales, we see a lot of behavior where some people could borrow on Aave, go do their swap between, for example, USDC and ETH on Binance, and then they come back to Aave and land ETH, which is crazy. It means that you have this hybrid between centralized finance and decentralized finance. But this is what big whales are doing. They're taking full advantage of the interest rates in DeFi, and they are taking advantage of the swap capabilities of CeFi. So Contango V3 comes to solve this problem. We're looking at the spot markets with a best-in-class spot market with double Dutch options. And we want to bring back swap from centralized finance to DeFi with the same, let's say, liquidity and feels that allows you to have a fully DeFi native solution.
So, because what you just explained there was actually, for everybody listening here that might not be familiar with intricacies of finance, the exercise of looping is just can you explain us too quickly what it means to loop around and do this over again, and how that creates leverage in a position, just so that everybody here is on the same page when we talk about this slightly more technical things?
Of course. So let's say you want to go long ETH USDC, and you want to do that in DeFi native way without using any per protocol directly, and instead you want to take advantage of the cheap rates that you can find in the money markets in DeFi. What you're gonna do is that you're gonna bring ETH first. You're gonna land ETH, let's say, on Aave, and with the ETH you have land, now you can borrow USDC. But in DeFi, you have what we call over-collateralized borrowing. So if ETH USDC is at 2,500 and I put one ETH as collateral, I cannot borrow 2,500. I don't know what the exact math is yeah, we'd be I guess quickly we'd be maximum maybe 80-85% of that. So it would be less than 2,000, I guess, or around 2,000. And then what you can do though is that with those borrowed USDC, you can swap them to more ETH, and you swap, you have more ETH, and what you can do is to go back in the money market again, ETH as collateral, borrow again USDC, swap your USDC for ETH, and repeat. And this is why we call that looping.
And so clearly within this exercise, you guys, as we said before, you nearly 20,000 unique users. So it's healthy to say that some degree of product market fit has been found. So with that in your pocket, you decided to do something rather extraordinary last week. It's already 2 weeks ago. It's last week, right?
No, it's last week.
Good. And so you went to Fjord Foundry, which actually is a very similar product to what we're building at BorgPad. Not in all ways, but there's some definitely overlaps there. And you decide to raise with your token that's about to get launched, $3 million out of 45 million valuation. The amazing thing about that is that this 45 million valuation was the same valuation that you gave VCs, including Coinbase Ventures and I forgot the other names, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That is in itself a complete deviation from what the normal play and the playbook in Web3 is these days, where you do seeds, pre-seed, seed, Series A, maybe Series B, and then you think about TGEing. And each time you do one of these steps, the multiples of valuation are just exponentially higher, so that you list them at incredibly stupid valuations. And essentially what we see for the last couple of years, low float, high FDV, and the consequences, we know them. tell us philosophically what led you to do this approach and this challenging the status quo and the old meta and kind of coming back on a very community-centric path and launching with your community as a Parity. Because on this launch, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Parity actually has better vesting terms than the early investors.
Well, it really depends how you look at it, right? Like, first of all, you have to keep in mind where the market was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when we raised at a 45 million valuation, we had like a full bull market at the end of 2021. Like, I think ETH and DeFi even increased more at the start of 2022, if I remember correctly. Then obviously the situation today is really different. Like DeFi is down. Like if you take like the index of DeFi, like there are many of them, but like if you look at the valuation, like we have certainly decreased the valuations by 80 to 90% still. Okay, so it's like a market that is like 4 to 5 times lower than it was. Obviously, we found a product market fit, which are translated with our metrics, but there was like different path for us to raise money. Something very specific to Contango is what we call Cotango, and I think it's important that we understand this mechanism before talking about why this 45 million valuation. Instead of doing the classic point farming for users and then airdrop them Tango tokens directly, which most probably are going to be dumped as soon as you can redeem them, we have created what we call like Cotango, which are options to acquire Tango at a discount. What does it mean? It means that if I have one Cotango and I try to redeem my Cotango for Tango when the price, let's say, is $0.1, so it's $100 million FDV, you're gonna get a 20% discount, meaning you bring 80% of $0.1 or 0.08 and one Cotango, and you get one Tango. If you want, you can sell it back in the market and make this 20% difference. And the 80% remaining goes to Contango Treasury. So that's the mechanism we've created. And the higher the price, the bigger is the discount. So if you go to, I think like 200, the 300 million valuation, you have a discount already very close to 50%. And also equally important is that this discount is at 0% when the price is at the 45 million valuation. Meaning that if you try to redeem your Cotango under or at the $0.045 per token price, you're gonna get 0% discount, meaning you're buying at the end on the market, or using Cotango. It's almost the same thing. Not exactly the same, because when you have Cotango, it means that you can have zero slippage and you do not have to go through a decentralized exchange. You just need to go through Contango smart contract. So the 45 million valuation is very important. That's the seed valuation of the seed investors. And then when we asked ourselves, like, at which valuation we're gonna raise, there was like several options. Either you go through the like VC way and you can like get higher valuation, but I don't think you can, like, realistically at the stage where the market is, I don't think you can get a valuation higher than, let's say, 70 to 100 million valuation. So something super powerful for the community and all the people that have been on board this project, and some of them from the start, was to be on the same boat. Okay, like if everybody in the community can get at the same seed valuation as everybody is in exactly at the same valuation, it means we raise together or we fell together. But the thing with this 45 million floor price and the Cotango mechanism is that you do not have any sell pressure under this price. So there is a way higher probability that we're gonna all raise together. Now I can come back to the term of the VCs versus the term that the retail investor got. Now that we have cleared why the 45 million valuation. Like, it's very rare to have cliff investing on a valuation, on the sale, on the public sale. So it was like mandatory for us to have no cliff investing. Now, it's true, it's better terms than seed investors, but it has never been our motivation to compress or screw our investors. That's really not the point here. So before even having the launch, we already came back to all our investors saying, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to raise the minimum amount we want to give the vision for V3, which was 3 million, which is really less than the seed investment. And we're going to keep the seed valuation. So this way, the community is going to raise with us. And I would say that, 90% at the start were okay with this reasoning because they see where we're coming from and what we're trying to achieve. And right now, I think it's almost 100%. And some investors are,
That's a follow-up question I want to ask you, because, I mean, the whole angle that we've been coming from is that this parity that you said between retail and an institutional investor is quite rare, because even if you look at something like Scroll that listed last week, they convinced some of the VCs that they invested at 1.5 billion FDV. They listed at 1.3, if I'm not mistaken, to take that cut already, to write it down, the investment. But they still were pressured to list at this ridiculously high valuation just because they did all of the previous rounds, and they couldn't write it down more than that. They understood the market we're in, understanding the meta is changing. Launching at a 4 billion valuation like you did in 2023 makes no longer sense on Binance. And now today they're still, I can check what it is, I had it here somewhere. Now they're looking at 50% discount on the FDV price just a week later. So everybody who's still retail that got in a secondary market still got royally screwed and hugely marked up compared to previous rounds. You decide, however, that the retail investor should look at this parity, as you say, be in this boat together. And really philosophically, that's something that's really beautiful. It's not happening very often. And so you guys are a really good example of, and you see the success. You guys sold out what in a couple hours, if I'm mistaken, 2-3 hours. It builds community. There's people behind you. The options on airdrops is such a good incentive as well, rather than a direct drop, because again, it's a psychological buy-in. But the idea of all going together, I think, is really, really beautiful. So that's kind of the point that we wanted to get with you as well, is understanding in the face of everybody else doing this very differently and still prioritizing institutionals, you were like, no, we're not going to screw you guys over, but we're also not going to screw our community over, which is our most important, valuable, and our users at the end of the day. There will be our marginal buyers as well once we go in the secondary market, right? Was there challenges also within the team, or were you guys all aligned that, yes, this is the obvious choice, this is what we need to do?
No, internally, the idea of the 45 million valuation fixed price was always like well perceived and well thought, because it all started with Cotango at the start of the year, and that was really like a logical next step. It's more about the external management and investor management. Obviously, a lot of people at the start raised questions, but were not against it. So this is very important. And it's also very important to always remember the market conditions where we are, because you learn as you build the product, and also as you learn how the VC world works, I think like Arthur Hayes explained it really well. Like in the investor state of mind, you may always want to raise at a higher multiple, and I think like something that really resonated with the actual state of the matter in Arthur's article was the creating an anchor point. Okay, like imagine like you have a first project that raise the first seed, let's say at 10 million, and then you do like I don't know, a Series A at 300 million, and then you do like your introduction on Binance at 1 billion, and then the market crashes by 90%, and you're still at 100 million valuation, meaning that you see the investors are still making a 10x. So does it matter that the market crashes? Not really, if you think you seek like really higher value, but who gets fucked along the way?
always a community. And to this article that you're referring to, the Arthur Hayes, the PvP one, right? So that's the one you mentioned that released recently. I mean, again, nothing against Scroll. They're good. Sure, they have some good tech behind them, etc. But they're a classical example of how these ladders go up, and then psychologically, as a retail investor, you look this price to drop 90%. You're like, now obviously it's oversold. This is the moment. It's evident, but no, actually, if you look, it's just artificial anchoring. It's just playing on biases that we have as human beings. And another thing he says in this article is that a big reason why these valuations go so much is because one of the biggest expenditures that any Web3 project has is actually its distribution of its token. Because until recently, or even now, like the way of doing it, even like if you look at DeFi project like Grass, they're going to launch tomorrow. The biggest advertisement is, well, we're going to launch on Bybit, and then the famous saying, when Binance, right? And we still have the illusion that a successful TGE goes through a listing strategy. However, you, a couple of weeks ago, wrote an article, and I want to just read you the first sentence that you wrote in this article. And you said, when you opened the article, after when token, the number one question I got this year was when CEX, to which I answered, fuck it. Tell us what that means to you and why you decided to do things differently, not follow this route and giving Binance 16% of your supply, plus market making fees and so on and so on.
I think the fuck it itself comes from a lot of frustration because you have to learn in which environment you're swimming. And I myself, at the start of the year, I didn't know about all these like CEX listing deals, and I was super naive in the sense that you're gonna do business with a new channel of distribution, and there are some static fees that you pay. And I had a rough idea, like you can go like on tier twos, maybe like between $200,000 and $400,000. It's like, okay, how many users do we get, and do we get the token better known, and do we bring new users to the platform? I thought that was the game, right? But first and foremost, like the most crazy thing is that you have to fucking fight for it. Like, it's not because you have a product market fit and because you have users, and on top of that, we are performing when all DeFi is down, that you're gonna get listing easily. And on top of that, you really have to do a lot of business development and keep fighting to just speak with the people. And nothing happened yet. You don't even know your quotes. You don't know what you're gonna have to do. It's crazy. And the fuck it at the end is when you know the full deal with everyone. Because at the end, like this meta of having to use the launchpad of a centralized exchange to have a successful launch, it's crazy how it's artificial.
Just so they can say that they listed you at a really early price and that the early investors marked up hugely, when in fact they the 99% of the people that may have gotten in got dumped on like crazy.
Yeah, so it's not really about the dump at this stage. It's really about the fact that what drives me crazy is that some exchanges, I do not want to have a general point of view, but I know several of them that have like this performance clause. Like, so basically you as a project have to list at a super low valuation to make sure that the users that get early on get a good price. And you have to not put sell pressure on your side to ensure that this price goes up. And I wasn't aware of that. And really, when you see those terms and on top of it, you have to put money to make sure that those conditions are there, and you simply are powerless, and everybody is telling you you should like list on centralized exchanges because that's the way to go, and this is where the liquidity is, and they are the king of everything, where on top of that you're a decentralized project. It's a crazy situation.
Exactly. Like I want to get your closing thoughts on this because I know we're getting towards the end of this, but especially for you guys, you're such an intricate play that's based on DeFi. The idea that, and everybody, even like layer ones who literally build their own tech on chain, the fact that they think that the marginal buyer will come from a centralized exchange automatically, like it was 2017 or even 2021, it's just not the case anymore, right? We're seeing it. We did the analysis of all the listings I got on Binance, and every single one this year but two, which was Jupiter and a meme coin, I think it was with, and Jupiter being an exchange for meme coins, they got dumped. They were down big time. So I want to get to the last sentence that you had in this article, which was my personal favorite. You said, "We're taking the bet to reconsider listing in the future because of Contango's traction and community, not because of the money and Tango tokens we're willing to put up front." And that changes the whole game, right? You and I, we're not saying CEXs are bad. We're seeing that the whole primary market business of CEXs is terrible. The fact that they can then add, for retail users who are not yet friendly with DeFi, they can be the middle ground. That's fair enough, right? So tell us what this last sentence means and how you guys might envision the future for Contango, the token, and as well as your community.
First, I really want to clarify that, Binance is, but because we talked a lot about Binance here, but I believe that the metrics of Contango were not up to the metrics of the project that get listed in Binance. So, like for us, Binance wasn't an option, and it's true that when you read the author's article about the quotes on Binance, that takes, I think he mentions like almost 10% of your supply. Yeah, it's a whole different story. But Binance, at the end of the day, I'm wondering if you do have a return on investment, though, right? So it's something that I cannot really put my finger on for this exchange. What I can talk about is more about like tier 2 and tier 3 exchanges. And it's the same story that you've described, though. You look at the list of listings they've done in the past year or two, and obviously there is a lot of selling pressure, but why does the price collapse? It's like, it needs to be very clear in people's mind that the price collapsed because usually the project's engineer airdrops that people then have a choice to keep or to sell. But when you're in a bearish market and DeFi is still down 80-90%, as a point farmer, the first thing you're going to do is to drop your token. So obviously all this collapse. And you do not have the buy pressure coming on the other side because we are not into a bull market. So now you take all these elements, and on top of that, centralized exchanges, not all of them, but like some mentioned in this article, have these predatory fees when they try to extract money from projects and community. doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's worth to put like a deposit of 500,000 if you can bring to Contango, I don't know, 1,000 users per day, to just put a figure out there. But that's not the market condition. So this last sentence is about the market reality, the reality that the current deal doesn't make any sense, the reality that at Contango we're open to expand our distribution channel, and a centralized exchange is a distribution channel. It's about also marketing, about bringing more awareness to your products to people outside decentralized finance. And I also believe this is how decentralized finance also raises, is by getting more and more people aware about the option that they have outside centralized exchanges or centralized finance. And a centralized exchange promoting your product itself, not the token or the token price, is something very interesting. So, of course, in the future, if some centralized exchanges change their attitude and they can justify their business, which is bring users to the platform and bring awareness to the token itself, then yes, it's something that we would definitely reconsider. But it needs to make sense business-wise, which is not the case at the moment.
I think the key word underlying everything you just said is the degree of conviction, right? Because on one hand, you come with a conviction that is quasi zero, which is airdrop farmers getting tokens for free for having done some actions in the past, and exchanges only listing you for their own self-interest and the idea that possibly your price could go up. And on the other hand, you have users, or like the second path that you explain is where the degree of conviction is so high that exchanges have no choice but to want to list you, and they want to talk about the product itself, not just the price of the underlying asset. And that reflects the community as well, and who holds people who are willing to buy your airdrop at an option at a discounted price. It's still a high degree of conviction to, first of all, having been there from the early beginning, but also still putting that cash up front. I think this is what we need to do best in on going forward in Web3, is how we go beyond pure simplistic nihilistic speculation and build up conviction plays again. And I think you guys are a really good first step into this direction. So congrats on everything you guys have done. Hopefully we'll speak again in the future, maybe to see the token one day on SwissBorg and on other avenues. We've talked about different things that we could potentially do together as well. Either way, it was really a pleasure talking to you. Kamel, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts as well on how you see the future go for Contango, for DeFi in general speaking, how we merge on-chain and off-chain. And if not, it was a real pleasure speaking to you.
Yeah, something I can add on what you just said is that at the end, it's not about the token price. It's about the utility that you bring to your token, and how do you make your token central and valuable for your product. And if this happens, then all the rest is a consequence. And we wanted to bring that first, and then we will take the consequences, or the feedback at least, on the utility and the ecosystem itself, right? So I think it's very important. It's very important to bring value to the product first, and then look at the technicity of listing later. I think it was a pleasure to talk about this journey, because that gave me also a chance to bring more detail and nuance to the article itself, which was super well received by the community. And I'm very thankful to all the people who have related to it, who have shared it, who have commented it, who have reached out to me. And really, it was a pleasure, Daniel.
Awesome. Kamel, thank you. Hopefully we'll do this again one day, and we'll keep talking for sure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers.